My name is James. As you've heard, I am presenting on this topic. I want just to say where it came from. I was doing a course here at McMaster on the Baptist polity and history with Dr. Heath, and I was reading about Henry Alline, and I was really attracted to looking at that because I felt like his experience was my own experience when I was growing as a Christian back in Africa, and then looking at the incidences and the revival that was happening during his time is also has a lot of similarities with the modern day African revival that is going on, the growth of Christianity. So it's very interesting to see different regions, different times, but the Spirit of God manifesting himself in the same way. And also, it kind of affirms what happened, for example, with Henry Alline, to show the marks of what happened again is still a pattern that is also happening today in Africa. So the introduction is the 18th century, and comparing with the African Neo-Pentecostalism. I'm intentional in putting Neo-Pentecostalism so that I can distinguish it from the classical Pentecostalism, because from Africa it's a different kind of Pentecostalism that is really indigenous, and the most popular believers are from it's indigenous and African grown more than an influence from the Western kind of revival. So it has some differences that are major and distinguishes it from that. So, and then shared emphasis that I'm going to look at is contextualization, spiritual, experiential faith, revivals, and the spirit of empowerment. And the presentation compares Henry Alline's ministry with contemporary Sub-Saharan Neo-Pentecostalism, revealing shared roots of contextualization, spirit-filled transformation. It argues that learning from these models can inspire reverse missions, helping Baptist Church with spiritual vitality. So I want to speak about Henry Alline, and as I speak about this, I know many of us here have written a lot about it. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about what I see from what I was reading. So in Nova Scotia, a revivalist, and he was an anti-Calvinist because as a Puritan, he is influenced by the Puritan background. He is a Congregationalist. There is a strong Calvinist theology. He is struggling with, he loves to dance, goes to the club, dances, comes in the evening, and he doubts if he is elected. So am I elected? Am I predestined? So those questions made him have fear, and he did not have a assurance of salvation. And he was afraid of sleeping, was afraid when he's under a tree. He was really fearing that the tree would fall on him. And me reading that, his struggle, I sympathized with him because he seemed a genuine man who wants to walk with God and please God, but he's struggling with his development in his Christian walk. So, and he's doubting if he's really born again from the thinking of what he has learned from his Congregationalist background. So and then he is praying, and then he has this experience. He's doubting, but in his prayer, he has an encounter that convinces him. He talks about the heaven on earth wrapped up in God. And I was reading, I was wondering, maybe to him, this experience was when he became a Christian. But I think he was a Christian before, but these fears made him feel like he's not. But this was a very important time that he was convinced, because of he experienced a lot of the love of God. And he felt this presence of God that convinced him, that made him feel that God is with him. When I was reading this, I was just a personal relationship with this. I remember the moment I believed that I am really a Christian, I was slain in the spirit, like I fell down. I never used to believe in falling down in prayer. So I fell like 3 times. No one is holding me, but I'm just enjoying worship, lifting my hands. And then I fall down. And then when I'm on the floor, I start thinking, why would God come to me? I am a sinner. I don't deserve. God would not relate with me. So when I was reading that, I was feeling these feelings that Alline had in this encounter of grace, that God would relate with him, that this kind of experience that was physical proved to him that God was with him, and the overwhelming love of God changed his perspective. And this moment changed him to become, this was the root of how he became a minister. He wants to tell people about the love of God. And so the limitation that maybe he was feeling from what he believed before about election, the fear of if he is elect or not, is now not present. And he feels now like God, because of the love he is feeling from God, is that this God that he is experiencing and has encountered is ready to save everyone. So he departs from that way of thinking that there are specific people who should be saved because of his experience. His experience influences how he looks at salvation now. And it was very pivotal in his, whatever he was he was preaching in every place he went. So he rejected the original sin. He taught universal grace, as I mentioned, available to all. His salvation as transformation. So as I was reading the way he was talking about salvation, I would feel the echoes of recapitulation with Irenaeus, of transformation, growth in transformation as one interacts with God, and kenosis, that emptying of worldliness and getting godliness and growing into godliness. So he sees salvation not just, so he's not afraid of losing his salvation. He is looking at the love of God that transforms him. So he looks at salvation as a work of transformation towards becoming a better believer, other than looking at it as a way to try to prove their salvation. So Alline practice, he preached extemporaneously with emotional and spirit-led sermons. He composed 500 hymns connected with marginalized rural settlers. So this setting, and I'm going to mention how this setting is really similar with the African setting, where there is the preaching is emotional, the preaching is spirit-led sermons. There is really no order. He faced a lot of opposition with the churches that he was interacting with, because he did not have order. He did not have timelines. He did not have a way of communicating that was popular in his times. He emphasized heart religion and community renewal. So he would travel for long distances. There was no formal kind of church preaching. He would meet people outside, and they would keep praying and listening and singing. It was very informal. So his kind of preaching was very relational to the settlers in his setting, who were struggling with poverty. There was no time to build all these buildings. So he is very accessible. He is relatable to the common man. These themes are really similar with what is in Sub-Saharan Africa. So the result was a rapid Baptist growth in the Maritimes, far exceeding other Canadian regions. So he's not really a Baptist on his own, but his followers, after his departure, after his death, wanted something they were looking for a connection of what believers who can really relate with what they believed from Henry Alline. That is, since the experience is about someone who is mature, you cannot experience God as an infant. He thinks about the conversion now of someone who is conscious, has conscience of themselves. And so he related to the Baptist and approached the Baptist. And the first Baptist church is from Henry Alline's followers in Nova Scotia. They laid a strong foundation for the Baptists in identity in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. And we know his followers also, and this church played a role in the formation of Acadia University. So there's a lot of influence of Alline in the Maritimes. And that's why with the mentioning of the Baptist church, Alline has to play a role because of the big impacts that he played in the development of the Baptist church in the Maritimes. and his influence also went to New England, where he died. So Sub-Saharan Neo-Pentecostalism. So personal conversion, same as that of Henry Alline, that is spirit-empowered transformation. They talk about when you receive salvation, there is this spirit-empowered transformation, a physical manifestation of the spirit. Crying, falling down. These were some of the things that were happening in the congregations where Alline was preaching. Experiential faith, direct encounters with the Holy Spirit. This is what was happening in the meetings of Henry Alline. Holistic worldview, spiritual and physical realities deeply connected. So there is no difference in the in Sub-Saharan Africa, spirituality, there is no difference between the spiritual and the physical. It's like they're intertwined. So everything I do, it has to start from the spirit. If I'm traveling, I have to first pray. If I'm making a decision, I have to first pray. Every single decision is intertwined with spirituality. So involving God in every bit. That's the holistic view of salvation. Spontaneous worship and preaching, emotive, embodied, and spirit-led. There is appeal strongly for the poor and marginalized, offering dignity, healing, and hope. So Christianity in Africa speaks to the poor and marginalized. There is no hope from the government. There is no hope from the systems, but there is hope from God. The only place you go and have hope, for example, in some parts in Africa, is when you're taught the good news that Jesus died for your sin. So this is good news apart from the bad things that are happening. And so the good news becomes a source of joy and a source of hope, because there is no hope in any other thing. So comparison with, this is a table of, I think I have mentioned all the things that are in this table from my presentation. There is personal conversion. There is that, in Henry Alline, there is that mystical union with God. And so there is spirit, in Sub-Saharan Africa, there is spirit-empowered new birth. There is ecstatic joy in terms of experience and emotional revival. The same as in Africa, there is direct encounter with the Holy Spirit. The world, the view of the world, spiritual and material realities intertwined. Same as in Africa, holistic, spiritual and physical, fully connected. The worship, the emotions, the preaching, the harmonies, the spontaneity, embodied worship, music, dance, and prophecy. It's a bit different, but there is a similarity. In these worship sessions, like in Alline's time, they would the services would take hours and hours, maybe the whole day. It's the same as in Africa, where people gather and they are singing and there is preaching almost the whole day. The audience is poor and rural settlers in Nova Scotia. In Africa, it's the same way, poor and marginalized urban rural Africans. Community impact, heart, religion, and social renewal. So Alline's time, he played a role in community integration. With a dispersed population, the movements from one place to the other made these communities feel like they are intertwined. They are together because of how Alline traveled between the communities. There is in the African communities, healing, empowering, and community transformation through the churches. I don't know how much is left. Right.
6 years.
Okay, I'm good. So the Baptist challenge from this is, in the 18th century, Baptists were open to revival. Especially, I know there is that difference between probably the Baptist perspective in Ontario and in the Maritimes, because they were influenced by the American kind of, and the new, and the enlightened, and the revivals that happened. So there is a difference. But the question is, today, will the Baptists still be open to emotional, spirit-led revival? What are the potential barriers? The rise of rationalism and formality in Western churches. There is fear of emotionalism, loss of theological control. I think this is a big fear of losing control, becoming disorderly, becoming and there's that closeness into the church wanting to be very formal and have structures which are good, but is the church open to this kind of openness to be able to revitalize the church and also ensure that the church is growing. Fear of emotionalism. We also know, like right now, there's the growth of spiritual but not religious. How can the church be open to address the issues of the people who want to be spiritual but not religious? Because the gospel itself and the Holy Spirit provides that action of that part of being a spiritual. The spiritual is actually a desire from what can be given by the Holy Spirit that is being looked for in worldly ways. So can the church be an answer with opening, with giving people that experience of emotional experience, meditation, and the mystical view, worship that can give these people a way to express themselves? So cultural secularism is also a block limiting openness to charismatic spirituality. So what is the opportunity? What are the opportunities that the church has from reverse missions? So Jenkins talks about the shifting of Christianity to the south, and he mentions that the church needs to pay attention to what is happening in the global south, because there is a lot that the church can learn from the global south. So the African Neo-Pentecostalism brings spirit-filled vitality back to the West. For example, these people who are coming from Africa, if they come to Canada and they are joining our churches, how can we integrate them into the churches? Because they have this kind of spirit-filled vitality. How can we welcome them in the church to be able to bring that kind of vitality in our churches? This is some of the opportunities. Engage in global South Christianity. Learn from the vibrant African spirituality. So the church could learn from the vitality that is in African Christianity. I was thinking about this and myself when I came here. From when I was in Africa and when I am doing my studies, I have changed a little bit. So I feel I need, when I go back home and I'm in the worship sessions and I'm interacting with these people back home, I am inspired more to pray more, to engage in spirituality more. So how can the church involve these people coming from outside to be able to bring these aspects into the church? So this is an opportunity that the church has today. Embrace spiritual-led revival through reverse missions and partnership. Thank you.